Hello everyone, and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Luna stood in the doorway of the Forrester guest house, one hand flat against the frame, as if the polished wood could keep her upright when her knees had already decided otherwise. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows in cruel golden bars, reflecting on the crystal flutes Will was raising in toast. Electra's laugh came out first, light and effortless, like Luna's on better days. Will followed with a deeper chuckle, wrapping around it like an arm around a waist. They were celebrating something small. A new campaign, a shared joke, and a future that appeared bright enough to blind anyone standing outside of it. Luna's other hand rested low on her belly, fingers splayed over the barely noticeable swell she had only recently become aware of. 5 weeks. Perhaps 6. She had planned to tell Will tonight after the party, when the house was empty and the music faded. She had practiced it 100 times in the mirror. Casual, joyful, like how people announce miracles in movies. Hey, guess what? We are having a baby. She had even purchased the tiniest pair of booties, soft white cashmere, folded in a gift box on her dresser upstairs. The box now felt radioactive. Will leaned down and kissed Electra on the temple. A tender gesture that seemed staged for someone else's benefit. Electra tilted her head up, her eyes shining, and Luna noticed the moment their gazes locked, truly locked, like two people who had finally stopped pretending the spark didn't exist. Luna's stomach lurched in a sharp, rolling wave that was unrelated to morning sickness. She turned away too late. Electra's peripheral vision was razor-sharp after years of runway training. Luna! Electra's voice echoed across the patio stones, as sweet as ever, but with a cautious edge. Come join us. Will just opened his 98 Dom Perignon. Will's head snapped up. For a brief moment his smile faltered, as it always did when he remembered she existed in the same universe as his happiness. Then it settled back into place, polite and distant. Yes, Lou. Come on. You appear to have seen a ghost. If only. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. Instead, she walked forward on borrowed legs, taking each step carefully to avoid shattering. The patio tiles felt warm under her bare feet. She had kicked off her heels somewhere between the foyer and heartbreak. When she got there, Will reached for a third flute but then hesitated. You aren't drinking, correct? He inquired, brow furrowing. You said you were cutting back. Electra's gaze shifted to Luna's stomach as quickly as a camera flash. Luna saw the math behind those famous blue eyes. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with what could have been triumph or pity. Luna could not tell anymore. I'm fine, Luna replied. Her voice remained steady, which was akin to a miracle. Actually, I came to offer congratulations. The campaign looks fantastic. You two look good together. The lie tasted like rust. We'll put the bottle down, suddenly serious. Luna, wait. No, really. She forced a painful smile on her cheeks. I am happy for you. Both of you. Electra reached out and touched Luna's wrist. Stay. Please. We've been friends forever. Friends, this does not have to be weird. Forever. The words ricocheted through Luna's skull like bullets. She drew her hand back too quickly, disguised as a reach for her phone. I just remembered. Poppy needs me at the office. Some problems with the new line. It was a terrible excuse. Everyone was aware Poppy was in Milan until Friday, but Will only nodded, relief flashing across his face so briefly that she could have imagined it. Okay, he said. Text me later? Sure. She walked away, not looking back. If she looked back, she'd collapse right there on the imported Italian marble. She made it to the driveway in her car, fumbling with the key fob 3 times before the door unlocked. Only when the engine started did she let out the first sob, raw, ugly animal. She drove 3 blocks, pulled over beneath a jacaranda tree that was already shedding purple blossoms like bruises, and screamed until her throat bled. The cramps began an hour later. First she assumed it was stress. She'd read the forums and discovered that anxiety could cause spotting, Braxton Hicks, and other harmless echoes. She sat on the bathroom floor of her loft, knees drawn up, watching the blood swirl pink in the toilet bowl and convincing herself that it was normal. The first trimesters were fragile. She only needed to breathe. By midnight the blood was red. By 2 o'clock there was a flood. She drove herself to the ER because calling anyone seemed impossible. Not Poppy. She'd demand information Luna couldn't express aloud. Ridge would tell Steffi, and Steffi would respond with a cool little smirk. I told you so. Not Will. God is not Will. The triage nurse took one look and immediately paged the OB. Luna sat in a plastic chair with a clipboard, checking boxes she hadn't read. Last menstrual period. Allergies. Marital status is single. The pen shook violently, causing the letters to blur. Before she could protest, they wheeled her to the ultrasound. The technician was gentle and clinical, squeezing cold gel onto skin that still appeared flat to the naked eye. The wand pushed down. The screen filled with static followed by shapes. Then there was silence where there should have been sound. I'm not seeing any cardiac activity, the technician said quietly. Let me get the doctor. Luna looked at the ceiling tiles, counted the dots. 112 minutes before the OB arrived, a woman with kind eyes who had no time for sugarcoating. I apologize, Ms. Nozawa. The embryo measured 6 weeks and 3 days. There's no heartbeat. Given the amount of bleeding, this is most likely a complete miscarriage. Like a transaction. As an example, consider a failed merger. Sometimes these things just happen, the doctor explained. Typically, chromosomal abnormalities occur. Nothing you did, Luna chuckled. A sharp, cracked sound interrupted the doctor in mid-sentence. Nothing I did, she reiterated. Right. They suggested she take misoprostol or have a DNC. She chose the pills because surgery seemed too definitive, like erasing evidence. They sent her home with a paper bag of painkillers and a pamphlet titled, Coping with Pregnancy Loss, which she discarded outside. The cramps came in waves after that, each one stronger, until she was curled on the shower floor, letting scalding water pound her back and thick rivulets of blood run down her legs. She named the baby quietly, in between contractions. Juniper if it had been a girl. Jonah is a boy. She whispered both names as prayers and apologies, until the pain blurred them into a single long wail. She woke up on the couch, wrapped in Will's old UCLA sweatshirt, which still smelled like him, and she hated herself for needing it. Her phone died around 4 a.m., and when she plugged it in, the screen displayed missed calls. 14 from Poppy, 3 from Ridge, 27 from Will. The timestamp on the last text was 6:12 a.m. Will, Electra has told me what she suspects. Why didn't you say anything? Call me, please. She stared at the words until they no longer made sense. She then typed back, her thumb still trembling. Luna, there's nothing more to say. It's gone. 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Will, I'm coming over. She didn't respond. She pulled the hood up, sank deeper into the couch, and let the silence consume her. He used the key she'd never requested back. She heard it turn in the lock, and his footsteps paused in the foyer when he noticed the blood-stained towels she couldn't hide. Then he was in the living room, dropping to his knees in front of her, as if she were holy rather than broken. Luna. His voice cracked at the second syllable. God, Luna. She was unable to look at him. If she looked, she'd see guilt or worse, relief. She concentrated on the frayed hem of the sweatshirt instead. I'm sorry, he replied. I'm so fucking sorry. What part? The question came out before she could stop it. For knocking me up and then leaving? Or to celebrate with her while I bled out alone? He flinched as if she had slapped him. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. She eventually met his gaze. They had bloodshot eyes and a red rim. Good. You have been pulling away for weeks. Ever since Electra returned from Paris. Late nights at the office. The brainstorming sessions. I am not stupid, Will. He reached for her hand. She let him take it only because moving seemed impossible. His fingertips were cold. I was scared, he whispered. We didn't try. My father will freak out. The board. So you decided to freelance for Electra instead. She laughed again bitterly. At least she's Forrester approved. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Her voice rose and cracked. I've lost our baby, Will. I lost it alone in my shower because I was too embarrassed to call you while you were toasting your new girlfriend. She isn't, he paused. Swallowed. It was a kiss. Last night. I was about to tell you. End things clean. Clean, Luna repeated. The word tasted like bleach. There's nothing clean about this. He bowed his head, his forehead resting on their joined hands. She felt his tears seep through the sleeve. Part of her wanted to console him, muscle memory from 1,000 nights when his nightmares about his mother made him shake. The rest of her wanted to push him away and never stop doing so. I loved you, she admitted quietly. I loved you enough to believe we could accomplish this. Raising a baby in a chaotic environment. 2 fashion houses, tabloids, your family hating me. None of it mattered because it was us. She released her hand. But it isn't us anymore, is it? Luna. Go. He did not move. Please, she said, and her words broke him. She witnessed it. The moment he realized that apologies, grand gestures, or Forrester money would not solve the problem. He stood slowly like an old man and said, I'll check on you later, at the door. Don't. The door softly shut behind him. She waited until his car drove away before allowing herself to shatter again. 2 hours later, Poppy discovered her still on the couch, surrounded by tissues and an empty pill bottle. Her mother took one look and knew everything, maybe not the details but the devastation. She didn't ask any questions. She simply climbed onto the couch, drew Luna into her lap as if she were 6 again, and rocked her while sobbing herself out. Days turned into weeks. Luna went through the motions. Smile at meetings, nod when Steffi complimented the new collection, and pretend that seeing Electra's face on every billboard didn't make her want to vomit. She threw out the boots, burned Will's sweatshirt in the building's incinerator, watching the smoke rise like a funeral pyre. Regardless, the nightmares occurred. Tiny cries echo through endless corridors. Even though she scrubbed hard, there was blood on her hands. She awoke gasping, reaching for her stubbornly flat stomach. One night, she found herself at Eric's Malibu beach house, which he used for family retreats. No one was present this late in the season. She walked to the water's edge and allowed the waves to numb her feet. The moon hung low, bloated and indifferent. I'm sorry, she said softly to the ocean. I should have protected you better. The tide receded, carrying her words with it. She didn't notice the footsteps behind her until a jacket slid over her shoulders. Ridge wears an Italian wool jacket with a monogram. She turned, surprised to see him there, his hair tousled by the wind. Poppy called, he explained simply. Said you hadn't answered texts in 3 days. Luna tightened her grip on the jacket. I'm fine. You're not. He sat next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I know what happened. She tensed. Will I tell you? Will is a mess. He blames himself. But no, this came from the hospital. One of the nurses is married to our chief financial officer. He paused. I apologize, Luna. Truly. The kindness in his voice undid her. She cried again, quietly this time, her tears soaking into the $1,000 wool. Ridge held her in the way that only a man who had lost his own children could. Steady and undemanding. When the tears stopped, he spoke again. You aren't alone in this. Whatever you need, time, space, a fresh start, we'll make it happen. She wanted to believe him. Part of her did. Months later, when the holidays arrived and Forrester Creations hosted its annual gala, Luna stood in front of her mirror, wearing a black velvet gown that concealed every scar. She looked like herself again. Cheekbones sharp, eyes bright with whatever armor makeup could offer. Nobody would have guessed she spent Thanksgiving alone, with a bottle of gin and Juniper/Jonas ultrasound photo. Naturally, Will was with Electra. They made a stunning couple, with him in midnight blue Armani and her in silver lame that caught every flashbulb. The gossip sites dubbed them the new Brangelina of fashion. Luna smiled as they passed, accepting Electra's air kiss with grace. Something inside has calcified. She slipped away early and drove to the cemetery on the hill that overlooks the city. There was no grave, it was too early for one, but she had planted a tiny olive tree in the memorial garden, nestled between rosebushes. She knelt and brushed fallen leaves off the plaque she had paid for anonymously. Juniper Jonah Nozawa. Loved for a moment, remembered forever. May 2025. Close enough. I brought you something, she said quietly, pulling the white cashmere booties from her clutch. She gently tucked them against the trunk and nestled them in mulch. Size newborn. I wanted you to have them, even though they won't fit right now. The wind carried jasmine from nearby. Luna closed her eyes and imagined tiny fingers wrapping around hers, the weight of a baby on her chest. For one breath, the ache subsided. When she stood up, her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I was wrong. About everything. If you ever want to talk, no pressure, no expectations, I am here. She looked at it for a long time. She then deleted the message, blocked the number, and walked back to her car. Some losses left you hollow. Others forged you into something new. Luna drove home with the windows down, salt wind tying her hair in knots. For the first time since that golden afternoon in the guest house, she felt the future crack open. Not bright, not yet, but broad. Wide enough to accommodate whatever came next. Behind her, the olive tree's leaves shivered in the moonlight, guarding two perfect booties that would never be filled, as well as a mother who had learned the exact weight of love measured in almost. Luna never imagined that happiness could be shattered so quietly. There were no screams, no thunder, and no indication from the universe that her life had simply folded into itself. There was only stillness, the kind that comes after a long storm, when everything appears calm but is actually broken. It had been raining when she noticed them. William and Electra. She hadn't intended to. She had only gone to return the book Will had lent her about stars and how they die gracefully. She used to joke that he was like that. Bright and knew how to end things gracefully. But that day she didn't see grace. It was laughter, fingers intertwined, and Electra's head rested on his shoulder as if she had always been there. Luna froze at the gate. The rain soaked into her coat, her hair, and the tiny life growing inside her. She could not move. She wanted to believe her eyes were deceiving her, that this was just a cruel dream brought on by exhaustion. But then Will looked up and noticed her. His smile faded, and was replaced by something other than guilt or regret. It was distance, as if they had never shared anything at all. He mentioned her name once. Luna. Soft and uncertain. But Electra's hand remained in his, and that single gesture was enough to break the last thread that held her together. She turned and walked away. The rain continued to fall, this time heavier. Her shoes slipped on the wet pavement, and she instinctively clutched her stomach. The doctor had advised her to avoid stress, rest, and take care of herself and the baby. But how can you rest when your world crumbles in front of you? She got home somehow. The apartment smelled of lavender and paint. Will had always teased her for trying to make everything smell like spring. She stood in the center of the living room, dripping and trembling, her eyes unfocused. The couch where they had their first kiss. He used to read to her in this corner while she painted. Every part of the room whispered his name. Luna sank to the floor. Her hands covered her face, and the sobs came quietly, like waves that would not stop. The baby, their baby, moved inside her, or perhaps it was just the ache in her body. She whispered an apology to the tiny life who had not asked to be a part of this heartbreak. I'm sorry, she said repeatedly. That night the pain arrived. Sharp, unexpected, and merciless. She attempted to reach for her phone but dropped it. She couldn't think or breathe. The entire world tilted. The last thing she remembered was hearing her own heartbeat fade into silence. When she awoke, everything smelled of disinfectant. The ceiling was white. The light was too bright. A nurse hovered above her, her kind eyes saying everything before she could speak. I'm so sorry, Ms. Vale, she whispered. Luna turned her head. Her hand went to her stomach, but the silence spoke louder than words. The space that had been alive only days before was now empty. For a long time she did not cry. She simply stared at the wall, at the tiny shadow of a clock moving slowly. The nurse offered her water. She did not take it. She didn't speak for several hours. When night fell, a doctor entered and said a few gentle words about nature's timing, and how common this can be. There was nothing common about it. The baby had been her motivation to hang on. Now there was nothing left. The next week blurred into one long gray day. The hospital released her, and she returned to her apartment, but it no longer felt like home. The lavender scent had faded. The walls appeared to be more empty. Messages from Will went unanswered. Then they stopped coming. Sometimes she thought she heard a knock, imagined his voice outside her door, and imagined him saying sorry. But it wasn't real. Electra had always been her friend. That was the cruelest part. Luna had introduced them. She remembered the first dinner they had together. How Electra laughed at Will's dry jokes and how Will appeared lighter around her. Luna thought it was nothing serious at the time. Love fools us all. Weeks passed and she stopped counting days. She avoided the park where she used to walk in the mornings, which had cherry trees. Everything reminded her of what she had lost. But grief has a strange rhythm. It comes and goes like a tide, leaving little gifts behind. A numbness that allows you to breathe again. A single morning when you feel almost normal, followed by another where you fall apart. One afternoon, she found herself at the art studio she hadn't been to since everything happened. The canvas waited for her, blank and silent. She stood there for quite some time before picking up a brush. When she finally started painting, she had no idea what she was doing. All she knew was that it felt like she was bleeding color. She painted the rain, the gate, Will's expression, the silence of the hospital, and the empty cradle she'd never had the opportunity to fill. The painting was messy, raw, and filled with darkness. But in the corner she painted a small light. A tiny silver moon. Almost invisible unless you looked closely. It was for the baby. Her Luna is within Luna. A few months later, she learned from a friend that Will and Electra had moved away. It appears to be a small coastal town. The news didn't hit her as hard as she expected. Perhaps she was too exhausted to hurt anymore. Perhaps she simply accepted that love can vanish without warning. Still, sometimes at night, she fantasized about a different life, one in which Will had stayed, she had carried the baby to term, and laughter filled their small apartment. In those dreams the rain never fell. But every morning reality returned, and she learned to live with it, quietly and carefully, as if she were walking barefoot on broken glass.